Hi, I'm Buffy and I talk about movies, and I finally got around to watching Weapons, which I had heard so much about, and even though everyone has already seen it and talked about it probably, I want to talk about it too. So Weapons was written and directed by Zach Cregger, who also wrote and directed Barbarian, which I really enjoyed, and stars Julia Garner, Josh Brolin, Alden Ehrenreich, and Amy Madigan, who won the Oscar for the Best Supporting Actress, and even though I kind of disagree with that win, I love that she won for her role in a horror film, and to be fair, she was fantastic in the film. So before I start talking about the plot and prominent themes and concepts in it, I want to talk about how the film was presented technically. So the movie is labeled as horror, but I would argue that it's more of a psychological thriller or psychological horror, because even though there are a couple of instances where some annoying horror tropes were present, the way Weapons is shot just elicits a ceaseless and constant state of tension. Pretty much the entire runtime of the film, you are kept at the edge of your seat. The camera is constantly moving and moving and moving and moving, and then when it's kept static, it is so unnerving, it feels like you're going to burst, you're so strung up. I love how dynamic the film is visually and where the movie chooses to give the audience some room to breathe. I also love the fact that in the beginning of the film, a lot of characters' faces are kept hidden from the audience, meaning that they also have things to hide, and which keeps the mystery aspect of the film active and palpable. My only complaint with the visual aspect of the film is how dark it was in moments, literally. There are whole scenes where it's very difficult and straining to try to make out what's shown on screen. I think it's an overall trend in filmmaking right now. I've had this complaint several times now, and I just want people to start color correcting better, please and thank you. In terms of audio, I really like the score for the film, even though it's unnerving and strange, but the whole movie is super unnerving and strange, so it fits perfectly. The only thing I didn't like about the sound editing, mixing, whatever it's categorized as, is that during the last confrontation in the film, the sound seems to not travel from room to room or even within a shared space. I won't be putting that last confrontation on screen in my video, but it totally took me out of the film for a minute. But there were some really effective techniques employed in the sound mixing to make certain scenes creepier and the anticipation of something scary occurring more palpable, like the Foley and ambient sounds slowly getting louder, and it works really well in this film. Usually I consider that a little cheap as a technique, but because you're always following a character's perspective, it feels like you're experiencing the situation the way the character is, so it's super effective. And speaking of the characters and their POVs, I loved the structure of the film. It was unexpected and super impactful and efficient. The storytelling is somewhat non-linear, but not confusing at all, and there are multiple characters we follow throughout the film, which makes this film a bit of a character study as well, which I absolutely loved. Shout out to all the actors in the film, they were all fantastic, and special shout outs to Austin Abrams, who plays a drug addict amazingly well, and to Carrie Christopher, who is phenomenal in the film. He was so relatable and realistic, which is such a feat for a child actor. His performance made me have a newfound enormous respect for Zach Cregger as a director, and Austin Abrams was so believable as his character that I would totally believe if someone told me that he wasn't an actor at all and that he was just an actual junkie cast straight from the streets. So the acting was phenomenal across the board, and I thought all the characters were fleshed out, flawed, and relatable. Okay, so now I'm going to give you a soft spoiler warning, meaning that I won't be spoiling everything, but I'll be discussing the general plot and the themes presented in it, so skip to the next chapter if you don't want to know literally anything about the film. So the movie starts with a narration done by a little girl talking about something disturbing taking place in a small town. All but one student from one class disappear overnight. At 2:17 a.m., all of them run out of their houses, Naruto style, and just disappear. Naturally, people in town are distressed and need someone to put blame on, and it happens to be the teacher of this class. I think Weapons is largely about trauma response or shared trauma and people's tendency to seek blame anywhere but within themselves. I was also going to say that the whole class going missing thing is an obvious metaphor or allegory for school shootings, but apparently the director refuses to label it as such. But still, it felt quite obvious to me, at least. But but there's also a theme of parenting present in the film and how neglected children present themselves in society. There's commentary on toxic masculinity and its effects on children, but the most prominent through line in the story is addiction. A lot of the main characters are addicts, and the way addiction changes people is extremely well presented in the film. The teacher is an alcoholic, the cop is a recovering alcoholic, James is a drug addict, and all of their motivations are fueled by selfishness more than their morality. That's why I said that this film doubles as a character study, because these characters are so well fleshed out despite their limited time on screen. The pacing is super effective and impactful, and you find yourself just as interested in the lives of these people as in the mystery of this kid's disappearance. The film is very deliberately and purposefully put together, and I had a blast watching it. But regardless of these themes, I think this movie works really well as a horror movie on a surface level as well. I like movies that are layered like that. If you want to enjoy it on a surface level, you can and you will, but if you start thinking about it a bit more, it unlocks a whole new meaning of the events depicted on screen. I love that, and it's so rare in horror movies these days. That's why I loved Talk to Me as well. So maybe I'll make a video about that film too. But Weapons is super effective in this way as well. Now, a couple of things that I didn't love about the film. As I said, it's way too dark in places. I mentioned the sound toward the end of the film, but most of all, I was kind of annoyed by a couple of super obnoxious jump scares accompanied by very cliche music cues. It felt cheap for a film of this caliber. So yes, I thought they were super unnecessary. And in my opinion, the ending, the very ending is kind of abrupt. So there's that. But I didn't mind that actually too much. But other than these little things, I absolutely loved this movie. So if you're into agonizingly tense films and genuinely creative horror movies, I implore you to definitely check it out. And I think that's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching this video. Subscribe if you're interested in more movie reviews, and if you feel like it, of course, and I'll see you next time. Bye!